What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Unscripted Field of 68 Michigan State podcast. I'm your host, Carter Elliott, here with my co-host, as always, Greg Waddell. And today we are joined by David Klein, aka DK Spartan Hoops. Does a lot of things with Michigan State. I mean, if you are a Michigan State Twitter person or just Michigan State basketball fan, I'm sure you are following him. So we got DK with us here today. DK, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm doing okay. In
Good.
light of everything that's happened, glad to be on here talking about it with you guys.
Right. And of course, we'd be remiss if we did not address that. Off air, we kind of had discussion about what we were going to do with this episode. We did have it planned to be recorded before the tragic events that happened on Monday. But all of us being, Michigan State fans and just people in general, and, DK and Greg specifically being alum of Michigan State University, obviously, this tragedy has us pretty shaken up right now, to be honest with you. Just speaking for me personally, I still find myself just kind of getting shaken up just in the middle of the day, just thinking about it, thinking about how close to home this hits for me. Obviously, I'm a Michigan State fan. I did not go to the university, but I spent plenty of time in all of the halls and on campus. And obviously, you guys, I've seen you, been with you guys on campus, met some of my best friends, lifelong friends from that place. And it's just a feeling that just kind of just shakes me up. Obviously, we have an issue with, mass shootings and gun control laws in this country, which are, kind of causing this in my eyes. But it really just shakes me, the fact that every time I'm on Michigan State's campus, or when I was at my school at Albion, like, that was the place where I felt safest. I never had to worry about anything. And what shakes me up most about it, I think, is thinking about, the families and the students on campus still that have to go through not life, but have to go through the next 3 to 4 or 1 year or whatever at Michigan State. And they're never truly going to feel safe. There's no way that they could feel safe after something like this happens. So that's just kind of my thoughts on the situation. Obviously, I don't want to speak for DK or Greg about it, but I'll swing it to Greg first, just to kind of speak on it.
Yeah, it's totally tragic, obviously. I put out a little video the other day, and it seemed to resonate with a lot of people, but I sent that to Carter before I even put it out. Like, is this even appropriate to put out? I just kind of want to say what I'm feeling into the void. It's terrifying. I mean, my I guess reaction, or my feelings as it was playing out, was first fear. I've got about a lot of kids that I know, that I coached the last 5 years, that go to school there, and I'm rattling off texts, and some of them responded, some of them didn't. Obviously, they're luckily they're okay now, but one of them responded, was like, yeah, like, I'm running right now. I don't know what's going on. And then you're listening to the police scanner, you're just sort of this whole community. You realize how much of a community it is when, like, all of us are going through this remotely at the same time, and we're all feeling the same things: fear, anger, just hopelessness. And then, obviously what happened. The murderer takes his own life, which is, I guess a cowardly outcome. Can we call it that? But thank God, it didn't become a bigger thing, because for a while, there were reports of this on shootings in every different side of campus all at the same time. And it seemed like it was this massive, scary, calculated attack beyond even just one perpetrator. So it was horrific. This is certainly another thing for this campus to go through. What a resilient community we are as Spartans. I know we sit here and talk college basketball, and I play the villain role, and I root for Michigan basketball, but, like, there is no community and no place that I have ever felt more at home than in East Lansing, Michigan. I chose to go to Michigan State because of the people and how I felt there and how welcome I felt. And it sickens me to know that that's a place that kids like me now might not feel welcome at anymore, might feel scared to just show up and go to class. So you're right, Cart. It's a problem that goes far beyond thoughts and prayers. It's a problem that we need institutional change. We need help preventing this from happening at every single campus across the country. But specific to Michigan State, man, I want this university to heal, and it's going to take a while, and we know that. But if there's one place that can do that, it's Michigan State University and the Spartans. So that's my thoughts.
It was a surreal experience, I think, Monday night. I started listening in on the scanners, like I know a lot of people did, and it was just complete pandemonium, chaos. And I think, Greg, you summarized it well in your video that you did, that we're just so numb and desensitized to seeing the headlines. And it's so easy to scroll past, another mass shooting because they're happening so frequently in this country. And this time it quite literally hit home. It hit the place where, I spent 4 of the best years of my life, some of the best memories I have, friendships and bonds that have lasted well past the time that I spent when I was 18 and to 22. I'm 36 now, and every time that I go back to East Lansing, to me, it feels like home. And to have somebody come in and violate the safety, the security, the sanctity of a place that holds such a special place in the hearts of so many people and the Spartan community, it was tragic. And the waves of grief have been washing over me at like various points of the day, where I let my mind just kind of wander for a minute, and still in just kind of disbelief that it's happened at a place that's so close. 2 of the victims were from the hometown that I grew up in and spent 20 plus years before I went to college. And the 3rd victim, I live 10 minutes from where they grew up right now. And it's just like, it just feels different. And it makes me feel like a little bit guilty for not taking like more of a say or a stand on some of the gun issues that have happened around the country. But again, it's just a situation where until you're really impacted by it, you don't know how it feels. And I certainly wouldn't want to wish this feeling on anybody. So my deepest condolences to all the, students, the victims, the families, everybody that's been impacted by this. And together as a Spartan community, I just hope that we can continue to heal and get past this.
Very well said, DK. And I think just to kind of wrap the point up, I think it does have to be something that's done together, and it does have to be something that action is taken, because I too am be so desensitized to this whole thing that I just find myself maybe taking a day to be hurt and sad, but I'm not doing enough to make change and make action. And, I want to use this platform, this podcast platform, to kind of just let everybody know. And just honestly for myself, I'm going to vow to do more. This hit way too close to home for me. It's just something that I'm really shaken up about. And I just hope that, the healing can begin now, and it can be done together, and the resources are out there for anybody. I know me personally, if, obviously just on this podcast, I've talked to Greg about this situation in depth. DK, you can always call me and text me at any time. I know I can always call and text you. We need to lean on each other in this situation. And eventually it's going to take a while. I'm not going to lie, but it's eventually we will be, a better for it, or improve on this situation, and hopefully be in a better spot. Now, obviously, as we've addressed the situation, we still do want to do our due diligence and talking college basketball and college athletics.
Car, can I say a last thing on this?
Yeah, please.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I had a lot of conversations just digitally with people in the last day after I put that video out. And, in a weird way, it was comforting to me selfishly and personally to know that there were other people that could relate to how I was feeling. One of the biggest questions or comments that I got from people was like, what can we do? What do you think we can do? Like, I share the sentiment, and it hits home finally. Like, what can we do? I want action. And I don't have answers. Like, I do not have the answers. I will say this from my personal experience. Again, what I have reflected on and what I think I can do going forward. Like it starts when these moments happen. It's been incredibly insensitive, I think, the way I've handled every mass shooting in this country for years until this one. Like I've seen it on the news. I've flipped the channel and then I've gone back to tweeting about college basketball. And I think one of the most, I guess, shocking elements of that for me was like all these people that I follow and I guess listen to, like, were acting like nothing was happening while this was happening. And there was a divide with our community realizing how important it was. So like, number one, the next time this happens, and make no mistake, as sadly as it is, it's going to keep happening in this country. It's going to keep happening until we get change. I won't do that anymore. Like, I'm not going to sit idly by. I'm going to be loud about how messed up this is. You can vote. I mean, I'll just be transparent. I am not a politically driven person on either side. I have missed elections without voting at the local level and at the national level because I just have not cared enough. I will never make that mistake again, personally. So I think those are a couple ways you can start. I had some people that know a lot more about me, about this issue than me, about the gun issue, tell me like, hey, you can write your local politicians. You can literally do things if you want to. And I would encourage people to explore that and reflect on that, maybe in the same way that I have in the past couple of days.
I agree. Very well said, G. But, like I was saying, we do want to, as we wanted to acknowledge the situation, we also at the same time wanted to, begin the healing process and begin, kind of doing what we can and, just doing what we do. And part of that is, talking Michigan State college basketball. And, I think I want to start with the Maryland game that happened last week before the Ohio State game on Sunday. In that game, we had a situation where.
Sorry.
You look like a walking 14-14 right now, and an NIT bid.
14 rebounds is generous, but go ahead. If we're talking basketball, I got to get my my Hunter Dickinson game face on. Go ahead.
Okay. So we come into that game. We're playing Maryland at home. We're coming off the ugly game against Rutgers at Madison Square Garden. We find ourselves getting out to a fast start. And yes, you heard me right. I'll say it slower so people can understand me. Michigan State basketball got out to a fast start. We were up 15-0. The offense was looking good. We were locked in defensively. And it was something great to see because we were coming off the whole 40 minutes of slow game against Rutgers. And we had an opportunity at home against Maryland, who at the time was playing really good basketball. I still think it's playing a lot better basketball than they were earlier in the year. They've been coming along with guys like Jameer Young, Dante Scott and Hakeem Hart and Julian Reese. Guys have been coming along for that basketball team. So I find ourselves up 15-0. And then slowly but surely, the lead starts to dwindle a little bit. And we kind of find a lull. It seems that guys are substituting in and out in kind of hockey line fashion in the first half. And we lose all rhythm that we had in that 15-0 run. And I don't know if I can necessarily point to a moment, like a guy picking up 2 fouls or anything like that. It just seemed like the offense kind of stalled out and we couldn't really find rhythm on that end. DK, I know I saw you pretty active talking about that game and what was happening in the first half, even after we got up 15-0, because I think I remember getting a text from you talking about we need to kind of keep the foot on the gas. We need to finish this, especially, with metrics and everything going on with the game. So I'll throw it to you first on your thoughts on what was going on in the Maryland game, specifically in the first half.
Yeah. So, great start. Michigan State has really struggled to get out of the blocks this season, I think, for the most part. So it was great to see them kind of come out swinging. I think that Rutgers game, left a bit of a bad taste in our mouth. It was a situation where I think that was a missed opportunity. You've seen Rutgers struggle a little bit since they lost. I'm going to butcher his name. It's Mawat Mag. Is that right?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So they lost him, like a pretty athletic defender, in the middle of that Michigan State game. Michigan State just couldn't find a way to string together enough offense. And that's kind of been the story of this season. Like, what is the identity of this team? I thought to a certain degree we started seeing some of that. I thought they played really good defense the last two games, specifically that Maryland game when they got off to the start. They hit some shots, they looked comfortable, and then the bench emptied basically. And we've known that the bench has really been in a situation where it struggled for parts of the season, and it did again. I don't quite know what to make of Trey Holloman currently at the moment. He only played 2 minutes this past game in Michigan State's blowout win against Ohio State. I think that they're having trouble being able to play him right now because he's not really giving you any offense. And I'm not sure his defense is to the level where he's really impacting so much on that side of the ball. So we kind of saw the bench empty. Holloman, Brooks, Kohler come in. It was just a situation where they ended up getting kind of stagnant. You knew the lull was coming because we've seen this so many times. And it was a situation where you kind of went into halftime and you thought to yourself, they probably should be up more than they are. Was it 6 or 8 at half? I can't remember. I don't know if you have that in front of you.
I think it was 6.
Okay. Yeah. So have a big lead.
It was
let
9.
them kind of cut into it.
31-22 at half.
Okay. And it felt like it should be like 12 or 14 to me after the way that they started. They kind of let the foot off the gas. I thought a lot of that had to do with the substitution patterns. And then, they cut all the way into it in the second half. So I'll let you maybe address that, Greg, as well. But I think ultimately it was a game that they needed to have. To me, it kind of was a must-win situation at home after you kind of just let an ugly game against Rutgers slip through your fingers. And I thought that the resilience that they showed to close the game was well. And I think that it was a situation where, Joey Hauser, again, has shown to be the most steady and consistent offensive piece that this team has this season, which would have been unthinkable a year ago. And here we are today. So.
Joey, let's come back. I want you back. I'll miss you, big head. Please. One more year.
Cart knows my agenda on I think the two vets Michigan State's gonna get back are the two incorrect vets that I would want back, but that's for a different day. To the start quickly, the first 13 points of this game were scored and assisted by Joey Hauser and Tyson Walker and AJ Hoggard. All 13 points were scored and assisted by that trio. And that speaks to, one, how good, in my opinion, that Joey and Tyson just are, especially Michigan State wins. Like, those guys are constantly carrying the weight for this team. But it also speaks to the impact that a good AJ Hoggard can have. He had 3 straight assists to open this game. All of a sudden, Michigan State has a 10-point lead. Like, when AJ is dialed in, he's not turning the ball over. You know how good this team is. But those, like we've just said it, in their losses, they've needed all of their vets to play well. And at least in that opening stretch, they had every one of them playing well. Akins and Sissoko didn't have to do anything. Those 3 gave them a 10-point lead immediately, 13-point lead immediately. But yeah, the bench stuff, I mean, you know how I feel about the way Izzo approaches the rotation. Like, he had those comments. I can't remember if they were before or after the Maryland game. I think it was after the Rutgers game. So before the Maryland game, where he was kind of bemoaning that he had to play guys 30 minutes. Like, why? Like, guys should play. Good players should play 30 minutes in college basketball. I know that hasn't been his MO the last couple seasons, but that's been a part of why the team struggled, was because there was never any consistency or fluidity to who was playing 30 minutes. Like this year, Walker and Hoggard and Hauser are all very deserving of 30 to 32 minutes a game. So we shouldn't want less minutes from those guys. We should have them on the floor as much as possible. And for the most part, he does that out of necessity, but I just wish he would like sort of embrace that that's the plan, instead of at times like, oh, we have a 15-point lead, let's get the entire bench in at once. I think that definitely threw the rhythm off of this game. And you guys just don't have the bench. Like, even with Malik Hall coming off the bench right now, he's clearly still not 100%. Like, you're not getting anything from Holloman and Brooks. The center spot is what it is. So Like this team is going to go as far as the 4 vets take them. And right now it's 3.5 vets. And if there is a swing piece, to me, it's Jaden Akins, who DK, I know you've talked about how he's come along pretty nicely in the last week. I saw a tweet with some numbers and some film on that. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that next, but he's the guy who I think could elevate this group down the stretch more than anything from the bench would.
Yeah, I actually do want to swing at the DK for Jaden Akins quick. Right after I just say this really quick. I think the issue is that when any basketball coach puts the bench in, you're not necessarily looking for someone to come in and like play at the same exact level, because for the most part, there's a reason why players are bench players are not as good as the starters. I mean, obviously there's a certain couple teams that maybe do a player or two that really is a starter that doesn't start. Like I think about like a Serge Rice at Texas, or what used to be Bryce Sensabaugh at Ohio State before he started the past couple games.
Stop it.
Shut up, Greg. This is not Bryce Sensabaugh agenda time for you. Okay.
Oh, I don't know how you keep working that dude in a positive light over and over again. He's on the worst team in the country right now. And he's the reason
all I said is that he's a guy who plays starter level minutes that doesn't start the basketball game. What to my point to this is that when we put our bench in, it's such a drop off that it's detrimental. Like we can't even at this point expect our bench to come in and keep a 15-point lead like around 10-8. Like when they get in, it gets down to like 6, or it gets down to maybe even lower than that. So it's obviously a situation where I know Izzo wants to play those guys. I know he does. Like that's him. That's how he feels about it. He wants to play bench guys, but you just can't. And you simply just can't, because the guys can't get it done, unfortunately, at this point of their career. I mean, Holloman's young, but I think he's hit a wall, I guess. I don't know if you can hit a wall when you haven't been having that great of a freshman year, but he's hit that wall as a freshman significantly right now. But I would like to swing the DK on Jaden Akins, because he obviously, we saw him as a pivotal point coming into the year, but with the way the rest of the roster shaking up, his play and what he does on both ends of the floor is going to be monumental to this team. Because I think that instead of looking to the bench to take pressure off of those top 4 guys or top 3 guys, I think Jaden Akins has to be the guy to take pressure off of those guys while still playing those guys. So DK, I'll let you kind of speak on the stuff, because I thought you posted some great things about Jaden Akins.
Yeah, so 9+ points in 6 of the last 7. He ends up having 9 and 8 boards. The OSU game. We always know what we're going to get from him in terms of defensive effort. I think that he has increasingly become a better rebounder, a more active rebounder. I don't know if he loves the role that he's currently in. I think he'd like to have the ball in his hands a little bit more. I thought that the substitution pattern of the OSU game was indicative, hopefully, of where the substitution needs to go here on out. As I said, Trey played 2 minutes that game. They played Walker and Akins at the 1 and 2 when Hogard hit the bench. I think that has to be the game plan going forward. You need to put more onus on Akins being a shot creator for you. We saw him kind of slash and drive. He missed 6 threes the OSU game, and all 8 of his points came at the rim. It's a spot that I think that in spots he's really struggled to finish around the rim. And they gave him some more opportunities, and he kind of maximized the times when he saw openings in the defense to be able to kind of slice in there and score. He's a guy that, again, you're starting to see some of the potential. If you end up losing Walker, if he doesn't come back for 5th season, that's really the guy that you're going to be needing to lean on. And I'd like to see the staff do it a little bit more. I think that they do need to give him more situations where I think the last score that he had, that reverse layup, he got into like a side pick isolation, so there was no guy in the corner. Sissoko kind of went up to set a screen, and then he rejected it, went baseline. There was nobody there in the paint, and he finished on the reverse. I think that what you've seen for some of the guards in general is that with certain lineups at the center rotation, it's really hard to find an open driving lane. There's guys that are just clogging the paint. I think when we saw the small ball rotation in the OSU game, that opened up some things for some of the guys to be able to slash. I think that just ultimately it comes down to him needing to be a more integral part of the offense, particularly when AJ hits the bench. Obviously, AJ can't really play off the ball. He's going to need to have the ball in his hands. Walker is probably our best ball screen player on offense, making decisions because of his ability to pull up from the three or the mid-range or get all the way to the rim. There's not really a guy that can do that on the roster, maybe outside of Akins, and he hasn't really shown that to this point, I guess, or maybe he hasn't been given an opportunity at the same point. So I'd like to see a little bit more of it. But I think it's a situation where you have 7 guys really in the rotation. To me, Brooks should be playing over Holloman. You slide Walker and Akins up to the 1-2 so that they're getting a few more reps, particularly offensively. And then you kind of have a rotation at the center spot, and those are the guys that you roll with. And to Greg's point, they're going to have to play 32 to 35 minutes a night if Michigan State's going to be in and win games against competitive and decent teams. And that's just kind of where we're at right now, I think.
Definitely. And, it seemed like early in the year, we kind of had that string of Jaden Akins where, he was, still percentage-wise, I think he's our best three-point shooter. But there was that stretch where he was just an elite knockdown shooter, hitting like 3 out of 5 a game, 4 out of 6, those type of numbers, 2 out of 4, just really knocking down really good shots off really good, finding himself to open windows, getting his feet set, knocking down shots. I think one of the most special things that you touched on, DK, was that he has the ability to finish at the rim. He just really hasn't shown it yet. But, people that have watched him in other settings know that he has that ability. He has the athleticism to do it. And it was kind of nice to see that he was able to get his at the rim in that OSU game when the shot wasn't falling from the outside. And I didn't necessarily think any of the shots from the outside were bad. It just was one of those days where his three-point shot wasn't necessarily falling, which was also good to see because, when I think back to the off shooting games that Jaden Akins has, I said it a lot on this podcast. It comes back to shot selection for me. I think he takes some really tough ones. I think when he keeps it simple with his shot selection, it improves his game immensely. And, he had some moments again at the end of the Maryland game. Obviously, he had the dunk at the end off of the pass that AJ Hogarth claims he meant to do. I refuse to buy that pass that he meant to throw it straight up in the air to almost hit the jumbotron, the Malik call, and then pass it off for the dunk. But, it was good to see, good to close out that game at, really big win, obviously getting a win over a top, I think Maryland's probably top 50-ish, top 50 in KenPom at the time.
I think they're top 30s.
Were they top 30 at the time?
They're 25 or 26 right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that they were around like 32, 33 when we played them, I want to say.
Yeah. So again, that was a huge win for us. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that AJ Hogarth was able to knock down free throws at the end of the game to seal it, kind of shake that feeling off of the Iowa game, which almost had a Peyton Sanford 3 sending me to the abyss. But it was good to see. It was a good win at home against a Maryland team that I thought was playing, pretty good basketball at the time and is playing better basketball. Before I move on to OSU, Greg, do you have any closing thoughts on the Maryland game?
No, great win. Good teams win that game at home. Michigan State did.
God, is that a beanie cap, by the way? How'd you make that?
Yeah, this was our sleepers beanie that I just flipped inside out and cut holes in.
Damn, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, if my team's gonna break itself, we can break ourselves too, Carl.
Okay. All right, and now let's go ahead and move on to the Ohio State game. The Ohio State game is twofold for me. Coming into this game, I saw it as a big opportunity because for some reason, every metrics person in America loves this Ohio State team. I mean, they had to be the only team that at the time had lost 10 of their last 11 games. Now currently at 11-12, which we will get to in a second. 11 of the last 12. Lose 10 of 11 games, and they still found themselves kind of in that 35 range, the 40 range on KenPom. And I was in shock of how that even comes about. But at the end of the day, that gave Michigan State an opportunity to get a win on the road in the Big Ten against a top 40 team in KenPom, which would do wonders for our metrics. And we were also able to do it in pretty impressive fashion. I mean, we held this Ohio State team to 14 first half points. You're not hearing that wrong. 14 first half points. The defense was stifling. We were getting pretty good looks on the other end. As always, Joseph Jamal Hauser my Wisconsin Stevens Point King, playing consistent basketball, doing everything for us. Other guys contributing as well. And we were able to open, a pretty big lead there in the first half and hold them to 14 points. DK, I do want to ask you, do you think that was more so of Ohio State's offense is absolutely in, hell right now, or did we actually do some things defensively that forced them into that 14 point first half?
Yeah, so just kind of circling back to my thought on like what is the identity of this Michigan State basketball team? Because I think that maybe at the beginning we kind of had one and then we lost it with some of the injuries, and now I think that they're starting to kind of form one again. And I think that it's twofold. I think Ohio State to a certain degree was in free fall. I think that all three of us watched them at certain points before that Michigan State game. To me, it looked like a dead team walking. I think that regardless of what the metrics said, this was a team that was really ready to just get punched square in the face and get knocked out. But I wasn't sure if Michigan State was going to be able to do it. And I think that the doubt kind of crept in a little bit just because they haven't strung together consistent games. They haven't been, overly great on the road, at least in this recent stretch. And so for them to come out to really lock down on defense, I think that Ohio State before that game was a top 16th rated defense. So despite the struggles and despite the metrics liking them, like that offense has been working pretty well so far this season. Michigan State's really hadn't been. And so I think it's a combination of both. I think Ohio State was ready to kind of just get kicked in the face. And I think that Michigan State took advantage of the opportunity, which they haven't done the last month or so. And they really just kind of put their control on the game. I think that coming into the season, I thought the offense was going to be better than the defense. I don't know where you guys were at with that. I just thought with the center position, I was a little bit skeptical that this defense would be legitimately good. And I think that we have maybe undersold a little bit how good the perimeter pressure that we can create with the guards is. Tyson Walker has unbelievably good hands. He stays in guys' pocket. Jaden Akins is obviously guarding basically 1 through 3 at any point in the game. Really outside of AJ, the guards are above average to very, very good defenders. And they've just kind of cobbled it together where they're rebounding the ball well somehow this season, despite not doing it the last couple. And they've put together kind of an identity on that defensive side. And I think that the individual shot makers on Michigan State give them a chance to be able to have a little bit more of a ceiling on the offensive side than we've perhaps seen. I like Walker. I like Hauser. Obviously, those are the two guys you have to lean on. Akins has some upside. And then when AJ's kind of stirring the drink for everybody, there's something there too. So this Michigan State team isn't as bad on offense as it shows on paper. I don't know if they're top 15, top 20 good on defense, but they've been pretty solid the whole year. So I think it was a game they needed to have, and I was just excited to see them go out and punch somebody in the face and win by 20-plus points on the road. So it was a huge metric win. It swung us, I think, from the 40s into the 30s, and it swung Ohio State the other way. So it was necessary to happen for sure.
Yeah, that was our first time before I let Greg go with what he needs to say, and probably some Bryce Sensabaugh hate per usual. But that was the first time Michigan State has strung together 2 straight wins in over a month. And obviously, like DK said, we struggled on the road more so than home. We actually haven't struggled at home. So it was a good win all around. One that wasn't really ever in doubt. I mean, even to the point in the second half where they cut it to 5, I was like, okay, it's Ohio State. They're a team that's not that good. Let's just sit up in our chair and finish.
Play of the game by Hauser, right? I think Hall got back on defense. He walled up. They took a bad shot. It came back the other way, and Hauser hit that transition 3, and then they never looked back.
Yep, and it was God. I love Joey Hauser. We need to have a Joey Hauser episode where I think we just get everyone to send in nice notes and things they said about Joey Hauser, and we just read it live on the unscripted episode. But G, you want to talk about the Ohio State game at all?
I'll just be super quick. I think the entire story of the game was just how dead Ohio State is. I give Michigan State credit. That's fine. It was a good win. It definitely helped them metrically. We can point back to like, oh, it was a really important metrics win. In light of the result of the game, the metrics are about where they are. Michigan State or where they should be. Michigan State took a jump. They're 31st right now on KenPom. Ohio State took a dive. They're 51st on KenPom. Like, that's 15 spots lower than they were going into that game. They handled him as they should. You can say, I want to hate on Bryce Sensabaugh. Everybody on the Ohio State team, including Sensabaugh and including 9 other guys, just has losing basketball habits right now. It's been that way for a month. They have now lost. Let me make sure I have the exact number here. They've lost, I believe,
11 to 12, I think it is.
11 of their last 12 games. They've scored under 70 points in 9 of those 12 games. Like, I get that there are numbers that say their offense is pretty good. It hasn't been good for a month. It's just a horrible basketball team. And those losses include Minnesota and Nebraska. So, again, Michigan State, you can give them credit. Like, they did what you should do to a horrible basketball team. And honestly, Michigan State did it probably more impressive than any of the other teams in that losing streak for Ohio State. But again, I think when you've lost 10 of 11, you're kind of at the end where maybe some players have lost hope, where they might not have folded as much as they would have early in that losing streak. But credit to Michigan State. I don't think there's much to talk about. I think you guys nailed it. And I'm more interested to talk about what you guys think will happen this weekend with another dead basketball team.
I was just going to say, you gave me a great transition there into horrible basketball teams that are in the 50s in KenPom. The team that we will play this Saturday, we will travel to Ann Arbor to take on the Michigan Wolverines, who are, right now reeling. Michigan just lost at home to Indiana with their tournament hopes on the line, and basically had a chance to maybe salvage something as they were, almost completely out of it with a game at Wisconsin, which they lost again. Both games, they were unable to score in the last 5 to 6 minutes of the basketball game when it was winning time. And it essentially has sent Michigan to a point where they need to pray and do pretty well to host an NIT game, probably. They're a pretty bad program right now. But, I do want to talk on the Michigan State-Michigan game because, look, despite everything that has happened with both programs this year, as far as how good or bad or ups or downs of this team, we know how this rivalry game operates. It's usually a split. Michigan State was able to win the first game of this series at home at the Breslin. Now we go back to the rematch at Chrysler. I don't know how the energy in the building is going to be at Chrysler. It didn't seem like people showed up at all for a game that their tournament hopes were on the line. They could watch guys like Trace Jackson Davis. But obviously Michigan State is a whole different kind of beast in its own. Greg, I think I'll go to you first. Ski Mask, the Hunter Dickinson God over there. How are you feeling about this game, I guess, from both sides?
I think this is a one-of-a-kind iteration of this rivalry, to be honest. Like, I think your point about how they've split a lot in recent years is a good one. I had framed it up previously this season as, these teams will split. Like, Michigan State will win at home, Michigan will win at home. Given just the timing of this game, we have to acknowledge the fact this is Michigan State's first game if it is played on Saturday, and I think it will be played. It's the first game since the shooting, and it's going to be incredibly emotional. I can't imagine what the players are going through right now. I can't imagine what Tom Izzo's going through right now. And it's already a very magnified, high intensity environment, even if it's in a half empty Chrysler, which it might be because Michigan basketball fans have checked out. But I've said you need to find the middle as Michigan State basketball emotionally. I don't know how you find the middle for this one. This is going to be an insanely high swing emotional basketball game. Now that's the Michigan State side. Now you take the Michigan side where I don't even think this team is serious about their season right now. I don't know how you wear a ski mask on the road to Wisconsin and you wear a shirt that says Free Jawan after what happened last year when you're a team that's not even on the bubble. They're just an unserious basketball program right now. And that's a whole separate conversation for another day. But, I'm sure Michigan's going to say they want to win this game. I'm sure anyone who plays in this game wants to win it and knows how important it is. There's going to be pressure, but nothing would shock me. Michigan could show up in this game in costumes at this point. Like they might care more about whatever the content is out of this than winning the game. And then you flip it to Michigan State, who, maybe they have this emotional rallying university come together moment, or maybe it's just such a big moment that everyone's so defeated and depleted, and just anything could happen here right now. So, I mean, I'm excited to watch it. I hope the game happens, especially for the Michigan State side, because I think collectively as Spartans, we kind of need that right now. And I say we, with myself included. Like, we need a moment where we can rally together around something. And if that means storming into Chrysler and getting a win against my dead Michigan Wolverines basketball team, I can honestly say that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, having to play in that like high of an emotion. I mean, because you even think about it, this just them as students, them as players of the university, like this whole week is gonna look differently than any other game they have ever played in. Like this is a unprecedented situation, unprecedented tragedy. So I personally don't know what the players are going to feel like if they, if basketball is even the first thing on their mind right now, playing a basketball game. Could you blame them if it's not? I mean, not everybody kind of looks at it like basketball is, my time, like get away from the situation. Sometimes you can't ignore the situation and kind of what's going on. DK, I'd like to know your thoughts on kind of what you think this game means for Michigan State. Just maybe as the outlook of our season, but also just as like Michigan State student, Michigan State alone.
Yeah, so I agree with Greg. Kind of coming into the season, I just assumed it was going to be a split. I just think that these teams, since Juwan Howard's been the coach, that's kind of been the recipe. They split, and neither team has won at each other's place since Howard has been the coach at Michigan. I don't know what we're going to get from Michigan State, and I think that this is a game that, as a fan, you obviously would love to win, to have like kind of a rallying moment where, the team kind of carries us above the tragedy that you feel. But that's so much pressure to put on these kids that regardless of the outcome, if they won by 20 or lost by 20, I just don't think that I can really have any negative things to say about the kids. I just think at this point, in this moment, I think that it's going to help the healing process one way or the other. Just playing the game and feeling, some sense of normalcy after that's been stolen from them this week. But I like how the emotions are going to be, and how guys are going to be mentally focused at a time like this on the road in a rivalry game. I don't know. I honestly do not know. And it's been very quiet. We haven't heard anything from Mel Tucker or Tom Izzo yet regarding this. I don't know if this game's going to be played. I would think that it would be, but I don't think it's a surety at this point. And what it looks like to me is it's a mystery. I can't even get my words out right now, because I'm just not sure. Like, how are those kids going to be feeling in that jersey, in that building, in a game where it would have been such a big moment anyways, to see them the second time? Michigan's kind of been struggling a little bit. They looked like they were going on a hot streak. Now they've lost 2. It's a situation where I'd love the Spartans to kind of rally together and find a way to win. But if they didn't, again, there's no criticism that I'm going to lobby on them, because I couldn't possibly imagine what they're going through at the moment.
Yeah, I think you put that, I mean, honestly, better than I could have put it, DK. Like, I just don't know how, what, like I said, I don't know like what the mental state is, and I don't think anybody truly knows what it is. And basketball to me has always been kind of an outlet as far as just in general, like whether it's watching, like even now in this situation that I'm in, the one solace that I have is like literally talking to you guys about basketball, or just leaning on other people and just kind of trying to, find some type of good basketball is something that brings people together, gives you a chance to get away. But obviously this situation is something like, Michigan State has never seen before. But I think it would be great to see the game, see the guys get out there and just play. Like it does, like you said, DK, it doesn't have to be a win or a loss. A win's going to be great. Obviously, I don't think we should ever go out to a basketball game with intent to lose, or okay with losing. But at the same time, just them getting out there, putting the jersey on, playing after what happened is a win in itself. And I think would be uplifting to everybody, not just Michigan State fans, just to see the strength that those guys have as young men and get out there and, play the game of basketball. But at the same time, I think Michigan State wins this basketball game because the Michigan basketball, I'm just saying, we got to talk about this. Michigan basketball team is straight up not good. They're not good. The Howards are not good, from coach to son, not good. Podcast host, worried about making statements and doing content, not leading his team to victories. Point guard, short. Kobe Buffkin, extremely good. Lottery pick, maybe in my eyes. This year, he could get there.
Maybe needs to go this year. Needs to go.
No way you want to deal with Michigan admissions next year with making your class schedule and stuff like that. Just go be an NBA player.
That was lazy.
I truly
was lazy. Come on, that was
what?
Lazy. The working in an admissions joke to Kobe Buffkin is one of your lazier attempts at humor at Michigan's expense lately. You're just you're a better comedian.
I've made plenty of more lazy comments. You need to go back and watch.
No, you're a much better comedian than that. That was just an F tier joke. It's okay.
Can I read something? So there's been a ton of buzz draft around Kobe. I think recently he's gotten on some guys' radars, and some of the national guys are starting to pump him up a little bit. The last 5 games, 15.2 points, 6.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 54% from the field, 53% from 3, 85% from the free throw line. Regardless of whether Michigan makes the tournament or they do not, I think that they obviously have an uphill battle in that regard, but they have some opportunities on the road to be able to get some of those wins that they could maybe need to be able to put them over the top. There's plenty of opportunities. They go to Rutgers, Illinois, and Indiana. You win all 3 of those games, I think that you're probably back in the conversation. I don't know how likely or reasonable that is, but it's a possibility. I think that this is a very interesting part in time for the trajectory of Michigan basketball, because if this is a season where they don't make the tournament and you lose Jet, probably, right? He's a lottery pick. It would be kind of surprising for him to come back. And if for somehow Kobe Buffkin makes a decision to dip a toe, which I think he should, I think he's probably going to get a late first round grade. And how do you say no to that when you've just recently seen the success of Jordan Poole getting drafted by a playoff team and having that kind of work out? Now he's got a big payday. If those 2 guys go, where's the incentive for Hunter to stay? And do you even want Hunter to stay at this point? It's kind of a weird culture issue with him. A guy that seems much more concerned about his own individual stats and his persona than he does really care about winning at this point. I think that that's kind of come clear through the screen. The recruiting class is not great for Michigan. I think it's decent. I think the Washington kid's pretty solid. I think Papa Conte is a nice piece to mix in, but there's a lot of question marks if Michigan has this kind of failed season and there's a mass exodus in terms of the NBA talent that's on the roster, and your All-American center maybe transfers or goes pro or does whatever he does. I don't know what he would do. Where are you at, I guess, pulse-wise, Greg, with where this is all going? Because this is year 4 now. He's developed a couple guys, but maybe they're not going to be developed long enough to stick around for 3 or 4 years. Like, where are you at with Michigan basketball if you lost Buffkin and Jet, regardless of what Hunter does, and like where the program is headed?
Yeah, it's just hard to say. I mean, I'm broken as a fan. I'll just sit here and take it. That's fine. You guys can. I think everything you just said is accurate and fair, DK. I don't mean to say you guys can take shots, but I think Michigan State fans can pose these big picture questions right now, which 2 weeks ago I wouldn't have necessarily felt are overly fair. Honestly,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if Michigan State doesn't reel in the 2023 class that it has, and it kind of has a softer fall to the class, but more of a class where they didn't get necessary pieces to elevate what they have on the roster, it would be probably fair to have a conversation about Michigan State basketball program trajectory and the way that it's going. I think that 2023 class, whether it's a savior class or not, that remains to be seen. But I think we could be having the same discussion about Michigan State basketball maybe a year or two ago. We started to see some of the trends where it's going. But the recruiting is the lifeblood of any type of program. And when you inject high level talent into a group, especially when you have 4 kids doing it, it changes some of that. So I'm not trying to shit all over Michigan basketball, but at the same time, we weren't that far off from having this conversation about Michigan State. Now things have just changed a little bit because of the class that he's bringing in next year. So just putting some context on
it. That's 100%. I think, look, next year's class, the timing of it with this year's results is not great, right? The only thing I feel strongly about at all that Michigan or that Juwan Howard is good at he's a good recruiter. I don't know how we say he's not a good recruiter. Like if this is a bad Juwan Howard recruiting class for next year, pretty damn good recruiter. He had the #1 class in the country within the last 2 years. I am not worried about Juwan Howard getting talented players into a Michigan uniform. I'm worried about what he does with them when he has them. And he salvaged last season in March, barely. It was still a disappointing year. And then he put 2 guys into the NBA as freshmen. If he does that with Jet and Kobe this year, then, I mean, what do you do? It's kind of the thing where like, it can all come back on you and say, oh, what a horrible college basketball coach. He just put 4 guys in the NBA.
Can I just bounce back on one point though? Like, wasn't Caleb Houston like coming into the year like a lottery type guy?
Correct, but that's like what part of that's an indictment on Juwan Howard then, other than the fact that the college team didn't win with him?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's obviously.
Like we're saying, we're worried about his recruiting trajectory, but he recruited a one and done and put him in the league. Then he recruited another one and done and put him in the league. Then he recruited a McDonald's All-American who is now in the rotation for 1 season and is about to go to the league. You guys are telling me he's a first-round pick. Like, I am not worried about Juwan Howard's recruiting if all of this is true. I'm worried about why he can't take these talented kids and put them into a winning roster. And like I said on Spiro's show, I don't know whether it's Juwan Howard's fault or whether Hunter Dickinson is the cloud hanging over this program right now. I think it could be both. I think you could remove Hunter Dickinson from this program and all of a sudden some guys like Doug McDaniel and Terrace Reed start to have winning habits that they don't have right now. I don't know if that's true, if it's fair or unfair. I just think like right now, Juwan Howard and Hunter Dickinson's legacies and their toxicity is so tied together that one of them's got to separate before we can say whose fault it was. And realistically, Hunter will be the one who leaves before Juwan at this rate. So whether that happens this year or the year after, I need to see it without one of them before I can say it's all Juwan Howard's fault. So I do think just specific to Kobe, he's going to put a toe in. He's definitely going to go through the NBA evaluation process. I personally would be surprised if he leaves. Barring, like, let's say, God forbid, if Michigan turns their season around and he continues playing how he has the last month, then hell yeah. If they make the NCAA tournament and it's like, oh, Kobe Buffkin was a monster and that's why, then he's gone and he probably should go. If this team ends up in the NIT and Kobe
you don't think that would make it worse?
What would be worse about Michigan winning some games?
No. I'm talking about like, there's more of a chance he comes back if like he doesn't have the success of getting into the tournament. Like it gives him a reason, like you guys being not to the level where you need to be gives him a reason to kind of motivate him to come back, be that guy, and I don't know, take Michigan to the NCAA tournament.
I think that's what I'm saying. I think we're saying.
Oh, okay. I might have misheard you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying if Michigan's season ends in failure, I think there's a high chance Kobe comes back. And I also think given the way Kobe is playing right now, if he does come back, like he's a potential preseason player of the year candidate in the Big Ten. So again, like all the Juwan trajectory stuff, it's fair to question. But if you can tell me next year's roster has Hunter Dickinson removed from it and Jet Howard removed from it, and you have Doug McDaniel, Terrace Reed, and Kobe Buffkin, like, give me that team for a season, and then I can tell you how I feel about Juwan Howard.
But the thing is, if Jet's gone,
where are all the rest of the pieces coming from?
No, they don't need any more pieces. We're sliding Jason to the starting lineup. Howard for Howard.
Listen, man, it's gonna have to be the portal, and I'm not confident Juwan Howard is the guy who can go in the portal. But again,
yeah, but that's not necessarily his fault. I think some of that has to do with Michigan admissions and just in general, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
we wouldn't be having this conversation if Terrence Shannon was on the roster, probably, would we?
probably not. And honestly, again, Juwan did everything he could do to get him, and he did get him. So I think, there's a lot of factors at play here. And if I from what I've heard from reliable sources, it's going to be a big shakeup offseason. It's going to be we need 3 to 4 guys from the portal. You've got right now 4 guys who don't play every game, just non-rotation players that I can't imagine are happy with that. There's going to be a lot of shakeup. It's just,
that's why I think having a 2-man class when you could probably bring in 6 or 7 guys is a miss on his part. He spent way too much time in the Isaiah Collier basket. And speaking from a Michigan State fan's perspective, where we put way too many eggs in a guy or two's basket before, I thought that missing on Elmarco Jackson, who had Michigan ties and started shooting up the boards, I just thought that his recruiting philosophy this class was a failure. And even if Washington is good and Conte is solid, like contributing pieces to a certain degree, I'm not sure if there's a guy, either two of them, that you're going to plug in for 25 minutes next season and feel good about it. And I thought that just having a guy who has Michigan ties, Michigan football ties, and not recruiting that guy as hard as you did Isaiah Collier was a huge miss on his part.
Yeah, I agree with that. But, I just kind of want to wrap this episode up as much as I do love harping on, Michigan's downfall. I still fear that team as far as what Hunter Dickinson can do to Michigan State when he is locked in, because you really can pencil him in for a 30-point game against Michigan State at some point. He does it every single year. So with that said, I want to end this episode kind of with some predictions for this next game. I'm not going to say an actual score, but I do think that Michigan State actually wins the game pretty comfortably, like 8+ point win, and not one that's like free throws at the end to extend it to that point. I think it's just going to be a pretty comfortable win. G, do you want to go first?
Man, I'm so torn on what to think here. I've been wrong about Michigan State a lot this season, although I will say quietly I got the Ohio State game correct. I was all over Michigan State money line, so maybe that curse is broken. I don't know. Right now my gut tells me this Michigan team's done. I mean, I hated what I saw in the Wisconsin game. I'll say that. I think Wisconsin's playing pretty poorly right now, and Michigan seemed to show up caring about all the non-basketball elements of that game, and they played like it. Terrence Williams was also out for that game. I don't think Terrence Williams is going to be out for the Michigan State game. Terrence Williams is bad, but the drop off between Terrence Williams and the guys they got to play after Terrence Williams is not great either. So I don't know. I think Michigan State's playing better. It's a very emotional spot. That's I think if God forbid, if only we could literally say this was just a normal week for Michigan State, I'd feel a lot more confident that Michigan State gets it done. But I don't know. If I have to make a prediction, Michigan State will win this game, and Hunter will make a fool of himself with something off the court.
Oh, I don't know. I lean towards this still being a split somehow. I just don't know what type of emotion the guys are going to come into it. I feel like the first 2 4-minute periods are going to really dictate that. And I think that I would be able to give you a much better answer after seeing Michigan State's body language and just generally how locked in they are. I think it's just so tough after everything that's happened. My heart is wanting to say Michigan State, but I think this ends up being a split like we all predicted, and Michigan State struggles a little bit in some spots. So that's kind of where I'm at. We'll see what happens, but I think the first 4 minutes and then that second 4-minute period after the first TV timeout is really going to be a good indicator. And if Michigan State can kind of keep themselves alive, hit a couple shots, then I will feel much better about it. But it's really tough for me to say with where everybody will be at with this game.
I agree with that. All right. I kind of want to wrap this up just by saying that once again, well, first of all, I appreciate y'all boys actually coming on, taking the time. It actually felt, good to just talk about hoops and kind of get away from what is going on. But at the same time, it's something that's going to stay in the back of my mind. And everything that was said by both you guys and me on this episode, I feel like is something we're going to kind of put into action. And though thoughts and prayers are a word that's thrown around and it's not enough, everyone who is involved with this and was affected by this, you are in my thoughts and prayers. But I'm actually going to make sure that actions kind of come hand in hand with that. But I do want to give you guys a chance to say one last thing, just if you want to wrap it up. Or you don't have to, you don't want to.
You go ahead, DK.
Okay. Yeah. Again, it's just such a tragic situation, and I don't know. There's nothing that can really heal this but time, and I don't know, just coming together as a community. So I would love the chance to be able to support the guys on the hardwood on Saturday if the game happens. If it doesn't, I obviously fully understand that, but I think that what Carter said is right, that at a certain point in time, if there's a way that we can support anybody through it, whether it's donations or going up to the school and just trying to provide some type of comfort to all the students who had to go through this. I definitely am going to have an ear to the ground, and I've kind of been just watching to see if something arises in that regard where we can actually make a contribution that feels more meaningful than just the thoughts and prayers, which kind of just come typical after these things. So I'm with Carter on that. I would love to be able to use the platform to be able to put my arms around the community in some way, and whether that's financially or volunteering or some type of community thing, I would love to be part of that. So.
Yeah. Thanks, TK. It's great talking to you. Obviously the circumstances are sad, and will continue to be, but to anybody that listens to this, know that there's a lot of people that share the way you're feeling right now. And if there's one thing we can lean on, it's each other in these moments. It's the power of the Spartan community that has been so powerful for me in my life and for many others. So if there's ever been a game I would be okay with Michigan State winning, it would be this next one, boys. I say that as a Michigan basketball fan. So we'll see what happens. Fair.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, and you're going to get your wish, by the way, too, Greg. All right, unscripted out.
Bye.